everybody. Welcome back to Red Mug Music. I'm Brian. I'm glad you could be back with me today. Last week we talked about my favorite rap albums, basically from the 80s, because that's really the only time I really listen to rap. And I thought that was a whole lot of fun. Got a couple of responses from that. But I thought it would be super fun to extend that. And this week talk about my 5 favorite R&B albums, pretty much from the same era. I had to extend it basically to my high school, just my high school days, because I jumped over into the 90s just barely. So, what can you do? But I actually listened to R&B a whole lot more than I ever listened to rap during the time. Like I said, I don't listen to rap anymore. I think it has just gone awful. So I wanted to talk about my top 5. Actually, I had 6, so I'm going to have one honorable mention. But let's go ahead and get started. All right, but first, I wanted to say if you're new here or if you haven't done it yet, this would help me tremendously if you would subscribe to the channel. I don't bother you too much. I only put pretty much one video out a week, and that's just because I have another job and it takes up most of my time. And this is just something I do on the side. And if you could subscribe, if you could support the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. And also, I have my Instagram. It's called @RedMugMusic. If you want to come follow me there, that would be fantastic as well. But let's go ahead and get started with these top 5 R&B albums that I just absolutely loved during my high school days. Number 5 is going to be Boyz II Men with Coolie High Harmony. This one came out in 1991. And I was just reading here. I knew that New Edition had something to do with their discovery. It was actually Belle Biv DeVoe, which may or may not be on my list later on. All right, the story goes, Boyz II Men, they were backstage and they were trying to find their way to Will Smith because they were going to perform for him and hope that they would be discovered. They ended up running into... what's his name? Michael Bivins from Belle Biv DeVoe, and they just performed for him instead because he told them that they were getting ready to break off and have a little side band or a new band called Belle Biv DeVoe, which I just absolutely loved. And when they performed for them, they actually did their song, the New Edition song, "Can You Stand the Rain?" And apparently they knocked their socks off because now we know who Boyz II Men is. But in 1991, they released an album called Coolie High Harmony, like I said, and it had songs like, let's see, Please Don't Go. Actually, that's kind of funny. That's a weird way to start an album, don't you think? Please Don't Go. It's very slow. It's like, hey, baby. And it's just kind of strange. You think they would probably start with a little bit more of a faster song, but they didn't. And the album did pretty good. It also had It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday. We all know that one. Motown Philly was amazing, and End of the Road. I mean, this was a really fun album to listen to. I didn't listen to it as much as I did the other 4, but I listened to it quite a bit. So that brings me to my number 4 album, and this one actually kind of came to me accidentally. This was in 1985. I had, what was it called? Theater of Pain by Motley Crue. I had that tape, and my sister, we were camping, and my sister was there, and she had this Ready for the World album, and she wanted to trade tapes. So I'm like, yeah, sure. And that's how I found Ready for the World. Now, if you don't remember them, if you remember the song "Oh Sheila," that's Ready for the World. And back then, if you downloaded music, which, I didn't do that. If you downloaded music, every time you would look on the list, you would see "Oh Sheila" performed by Prince. So everybody thought Ready for the World was actually Prince, but they do have a lot of Prince sounds, but it's not Prince. I don't think he has anything to do with them whatsoever. But this is an album that I absolutely wore out. I probably shouldn't have had it because, in 1985, I was a little young to be listening to stuff like this, but it was very adult. I was listening to it downstairs earlier today, and I hope I didn't listen to this around my parents because I'm embarrassed. Anyway, so that's my number 4, Ready for the World, with their debut album called Ready for the World. Okay, now for my number 3 album. This was a super fun album. It actually came out in 1992, but you probably know the 1994 release that they had called Crazy Sexy Cool, and you probably know by now this is TLC. Now, Crazy Sexy Cool had Creep on it and Waterfalls, and that, I mean, they hit it huge, but the album that I really liked, let me get back here to it, was called Ooh, on the TLC tip. Now, this one, if you remember, has that Ain't Too Proud to Beg song on it. This was so good. This was just a really good album all the way down. You had, let me see if I remember their names, T-Boz, Left Eye, and dang, I can't remember her name. But I just the 3 different types of music, singing coming together was just, I thought it was phenomenal. I thought this was something really new, really fresh, and I just liked it a whole lot. So TLC, if you know the third name, I mean, I could look it up. It'd be so easy, and I wouldn't look like a fool on screen. But I didn't think I was going to say her name. T-Boz, Left Eye, and I can't think of her name. Anyway, if you know the name, comment down below. Let me know. That would be fantastic. Okay, now my number 2, my number 1 were really hard to say which one's going to be number 1, which one's number 2. So I just went based on the fact of which one I listened to more. Like the tape. I have the tapes. I number 1 was the one that I absolutely wore out, but number 2 was a very close second. And the number 2, I've already mentioned them once before, was Poison by Belle Biv DeVoe. Guys, this album, plus the number 1, all of these were basically the soundtrack of my high school days until I got to be a senior. When I became a senior, I shifted into this alternative world, and I was listening to more like REM and things like that, The Cure, which, maybe I'll get into that later. But when Belle Biv DeVoe hit in 1990, I was in heaven. This was absolutely like some of my favorite material ever to exist in the history of the world. We got Do Me, Poison, and Ain't Nothing Changed. I mean, this BBD, I Thought It Was Me, Let Me Know Something. This whole album, I knew every single word of this entire album, and it was so good. I love it. I even listen to it now. This brings us to our number 1. But before we do the number 1, I want to go ahead and talk about the honorable mention, which was basically would have been the number 6, but I was only talking about my top 5, and that's going to be Janet Jackson with Rhythm Nation 1814. This one was super fun for me, and it came out in 1989, and it kind of I think it's maybe one of the first albums that I listened to that introduced me to like a concept album. There's a particular idea of what's going on here, but album or songs like Rhythm Nation, State of the World, Miss You Much. Let me see, Love Will Never Do Without You. Let's see, Escapade, Black Cat, Come Back to Me. All right, I just listened to Black Cat. That song is pure fire. I mean, Janet Jackson pulled off this rock song like better than anybody, and it sounds so good. I almost pulled out the guitar just to play with it, but I didn't have time to. But I really enjoyed this album, and even though, like, when you look at it, it's got 20 tracks, a lot of those are interludes, and I'm not a big fan. Let's see, how long does it last? It's an hour and 5 minutes, so it's a really long album for me. But the particular idea that she was trying to give across was well taken, and it did keep my attention. So for a long album, this is one of my favorites. But that's my honorable mention for today. Okay, so now we're to my number 1 R&B album that I just absolutely loved and could not live without. And I don't know if I could have lived without this one. This was absolutely the soundtrack of my life. It came out in 1988, and this is just, I love it. I just love this, and it's New Edition with Heartbreak. Now, the funny thing about it is Bobby Brown was in this album, and I can tell you this, he was one of my favorite acts of the 80s, like R&B, but I never really listened to the album. I just liked his singles, so that's why I didn't include Bobby Brown. But the funny thing about it is this particular album doesn't have Bobby Brown at all. This is after he had left the band and Johnny Gill, JG, had entered the band. And actually, he is a huge part of this album. He was very important. And actually, when he went solo, I kind of went on and followed him as well. I mean, New Edition to me was like the ultimate band. And the funny thing about it is the lead singer, Ralph Tresvant, he was basically the leader of the band, the lead singer. But when he went solo, he was the only solo act that I really didn't care about, which is really crazy because he was the real sound, the biggest sound of New Edition. But I kind of didn't like him solo. But anyway. New Edition, Heartbreak. This one has, this is the album that has If It Isn't Love, which may be my favorite R&B song ever to exist. And I remember in 1988 when this video came out, 1989, I remember watching the video and they did a lot of dancing. And I tried to do that dance. Watch the video. I'll try to link it down below if I can find it on YouTube, but I want you to watch this video. And I did this dance for probably 5 years after this because it was just so amazing. But just like I was talking about earlier with Boys to Men, they sang that song, Can You Stand the Rain? That's on this album as well. But If It Isn't Love, it's a really good album. And it has If It Isn't Love, Any Heartbreak, Crucial, You're Not My Kind of Girl, Super Lady, Can You Stand the Rain? I mean, this was really good stuff, and I absolutely destroyed this tape. I played it way too many times, but that's it. That's my top 5 plus my honorable mention R&B albums that I just love from my high school days. If you have any that you like, comment down below. Let me know what those are. I'd love to hear. I know there's a lot more out there. I mean, I remember having more albums like Jodeci and R. Kelly and things like that, but and I didn't include Michael Jackson. And I didn't include Prince because they would have taken up the whole entire list. You know, why is Thriller not on there? I purposely didn't include Michael Jackson and Prince just because they are hands down in a league of their own. And Prince is my favorite between those two. But I just didn't want to include them, because of that. Because I cover Prince a lot, and you should know that he's one of my favorites. But anyway, that's it for my top 5 R&B albums. I want to talk about my sponsor, which is actually down in Universal right now. Her name is Holli Carter. She's a vacation consultant with the Magic for Less Travel. She's going to give you a personalized service and expert guidance that you need for the vacation you deserve. So I'll throw up the QR code, and you can get a no obligation quote. And if you want to go to Disney or Universal, Disneyland is also I think they're open now. So if you're ready to go out there, she can handle that too. That's her favorite park out of all of them. And I know they're talking about having some cruises coming up. So if you're ready to do that, she's your person. So that's Holli Carter, vacation consultant with the Magic for Less Travel. Contact her and you won't be sorry. Well, anyway, that's going to be it for me today. Again, if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe. It helps me. It helps me so much. And, comment, share, just anything you can do to get the material out to people that you think may enjoy it. And again, my Instagram at Red Mug Music. That's it for me today. I will see you guys next week.